And there were previous stories about, for example, in Gaza, Hamas is diverting U.S. aid and Hamas is diverting aid away from the people who need it. And now we're finding out more and more that that isn't true. And there are women and children who are being affected by this. So, do you have any sort of thoughts about that in terms of how this has literally become a political talking point that is a function of people's actual humanity?
Yeah, it's like we're trading in people's humanity when we can all look at the same photo and draw the same conclusions. There was so much discussion on October 7th about what did and didn't. And in the span of 2 hours, I saw 2 different videos, a woman with bloodied sweatpants and then a dismembered child in Gaza. And I said, I don't need anyone to tell me what's happening anywhere. And I'm infuriated by the demographic of the left who says, no, that's not true. Let's blame Hamas. Y'all, I can see a kid's spine while he lays on his mother's chest.
My God.
Don't talk to me about who did what first. And if we have lost so much of our moral compass that we are tit-for-tatting who did what first, policy, are we saving $110 million or burning $167,000 by burning it? We are too far gone, and I don't know how we get back to ourselves.
Jenna Arnold, thank you so much for being here and sharing your voice with us tonight. We appreciate you. Democratic Party progressives continue to step into the spotlight. New York City has Zoran Mamdani, and now Minnesota State Senator Omar Fatah is making headlines in Minneapolis as its Democratic mayoral candidate. He's live with us next. Zoran Mamdani's surprising victory last month in the New York City mayoral primary sent a message to the Democratic Party that progressives can gain momentum against established candidates. And now a repeat performance may be happening in Minneapolis. Last Saturday, Minnesota State Senator Omar Fatah, who is running in the mayoral election, won the coveted endorsement of the state Democratic Farmer Labor Party. Fatah, a self-described socialist and the son of Somali immigrants, won the endorsement over 2-term incumbent Mayor Jacob Frey. Fatah's ascension is already being compared to Mamdani's, including the fact that he's running on a more progressive campaign focusing on issues like investing in affordable housing, reforming public safety, and protecting the city's communities, including immigrants, against Trump's immigration crackdowns. Joining us now is that Minnesota State Senator and Minneapolis mayoral candidate, Omar Fatah. He is the first Somali American and Muslim to serve in the Minnesota Senate. Omar, thank you so much for joining us and congratulations on this key endorsement. You said when you gave your victory speech, you said, today we witnessed a rejection of politics as usual. What did you mean by that? And what are Democratic voters starting to reject in this moment?
Well, thank you so much for having me first. And Minneapolis has been through a lot as a city. A global pandemic, the murder of George Floyd, a crisis in public safety, and an affordable housing emergency. And at every single turn, what we've seen is that our current mayor has failed to meet the moment, and he's vetoed solutions that would have supported workers, renters, our unhoused neighbors, and instead protected the status quo instead of transforming public safety. For example, in 2017, he promised and campaigned on ending homelessness by 2022. But now that since he took office, homeless rate is actually much higher. Following the murder of George Floyd, he pledged to reform public safety. And 5 years later, there's still no plan, just a trail of vetoes and broken promises. He promised to stand by our workers and our immigrants, but instead, when it came to protect our rideshare drivers, he caved to Uber. And quietly, he's also allowed MPD to collaborate with ICE. And so this election is about who our residents trust to lead in a time of crisis. And right now, they're hungry for new leadership that is rooted in justice and compassion and not just performative politics.
So let's pick up right there, Senator. When you talk about performative politics, there is this growing rift between progressives and establishment Democrat politics, if you will. We are seeing it play out in local elections here in New York City. You've alluded to it in terms of your home city of Minneapolis. Are you prepared as someone who is trying to assume a leadership role or another leadership role in your city to sort of say, look, this is the direction we're going, as opposed to sort of walking things back in a general election or in a general sense to try and reconcile or mend that rift, if that means having to go back to center and deal with the sort of establishment politics of what that institution has meant in your city?
We built a broad coalition, and I have the experience in the Senate working across ideological differences. I'm incredibly honored to have the most endorsements in this race that range from not just progressives, but Blue Dog Coalition members and unions. And they all agree that my effective leadership and work ethic is exactly what Minneapolis residents want and also deserve in a mayor. While our current incumbent has failed by calling our vision extreme at times, the reality is that I've passed many of these so-called extreme ideas with not only support within our caucus, but bipartisanly. And things like tuition-free college for working-class families, rideshare protections for Uber and Lyft drivers, because I can work with my colleagues across the aisle to get things done. And while I have these bipartisan accomplishments, our current incumbent would rather stall progress by fighting with not just the mostly DFL, but the progressive majority within the city council instead of finding ways to work and collaborate with them. And so right now, our message is that not only can we not continue on this path, but we really don't have to.
Mr. Fatah, you mentioned George Floyd and policing in Minneapolis. And Minneapolis is a very blue city and very liberal and progressive. And you've also said that you support defunding the police and dismantling. What would your policing vision be for Minneapolis?
Well, we have not campaigned on dismantling or defunding the police following the murder of George Floyd.
But previously, you have stated support.
I have not stated support in the past. No, that's not correct. But what we know is that the incumbent mayor had pledged after the murder of George Floyd 5 years ago to reform our public safety system. And right now, there is still no plan. There's just, as I said, a trail of vetoes. Just last week, we learned that the officer who shot and killed Amir Locke was quietly promoted into a training role within the MPD. And when the press found out, the mayor kind of backtracked and said, oh, well, I'm still going to back my chief and defend this decision. But right now, just yesterday, we saw that there was public outrage around that allowed the officer to be reassigned. What we know right now is that there are two consent decrees, one federal and one state, that needs to be implemented, that the mayor is failing to do so. And the own city's report showed that 47% of MPD calls and 911 calls to MPD can be diverted away from police. And that kind of matches what I've heard myself as senator at the Capitol. Law enforcement coming and saying that we cannot handle every single call. We are not mental health workers. We're not social workers. We need some help. And so right now what we're saying is we can provide that help and expand our public safety system so that you can get the correct call at the right time.
So it sounds like what you're talking about, and I'd love you to just sort of say a little more about this, because the right loves to paint progressives as being anti-police, but that's not what you're saying at all. And I would love you to just expand on that and explain how you do really believe in policing for crimes, but not necessarily for mental health crises.
Absolutely. Well, the city, our residents believe and is following a message from our campaign that not every single call warrants an armed officer. Again, the city's own report showed that nearly half of the calls can be diverted away from officers. And so we know that we can expand things like BCR, the Behavioral Crisis Response Team. At the Capitol, for example, I worked to bring in $19 million in public safety aid for the city of Minneapolis, which largely went untouched because the mayor and the city council couldn't really agree, and the mayor kind of stalled that funding. But what we're saying is that when someone is calling 911 for any reason, they need to have the appropriate response. For example, if there is a young 13-year-old that's having a mental health breakdown or crisis, you don't need an army of armed officers swarming that situation. I think that warrants a different kind of approach. And so what we're saying is that we can reimagine a public safety system that matches the needs of our residents.
With some of the established Democrats in your state, like Tim Walz, having endorsed your opponent, but then the momentum seeming on a national level to swing toward progressives, this is going to be a very interesting race that we will keep our eyes on. That was Minnesota State Senator Omar Fatah. Thank you for joining us.